Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm It's Robbie Rhino, and in today's video I have a full review for you of the level 100 reward for the brand new Year of the Dragon season. It's the WZ-1224, and if we scroll on down here, let's have a look at the tank in question. This is the artwork that World of Tanks console have put up on the article for everyone to have a look at. It's an Eastern Alliance Premium Era 2 medium tank. And what do they have to say about this vehicle? It's got a 120mm gun, which is hard hitting for Era 2, and it has spaced composite armour on the hull and on the turret. And there's also a note that there is a skin coming for the WZ-1224 called the Cinnabar skin, and that will be in an earnable challenge coming later in this season. So let's have a quick look at this vehicle. A very unusual shaped turret because it has slabs of composite armour over the front. Quite compact, the hull and the turret are very close together, a large lower plate, and yeah, quite a compact little medium tank. A raised engine deck at the back, which will probably mean it's got horrific gun depression over the back, and maybe this tank will get set on fire. We'll have to see a little bit later on. But in today's video, we're going to be going over to Excel in just a second and having a look at the stats of the WZ-1224 and comparing to 3 other Premium Era 2 medium tanks. I'll show you my equipment and my commander setup and how that affects the base stats of this vehicle, the armour profile of the WZ-1224 in the garage, and then I do have 4 gameplays for you to show you how this tank performs on the battlefield. But quickly, how do you get this tank? Well, as it's the level 100 reward, you need to purchase the 2000 gold season pass, and when you reach level 100 you will get yourself a brand new shiny WZ-1224 along with all the other goodies that you have ground out along the way. So 2000 gold for this tank, pretty good price indeed. So let's head on over to Excel, have a look at the stats here of the WZ-1224, and I've got them all here on the left, including the Silver XP and Commander XP bonus. And in this particular review we're going to be comparing to the Armour, the Bandit and the Jaguar Black Edition, as they all have similar caliber guns and they do have a very similar playstyle with limited gun depression and some pretty useful armour on some of these tanks, as well as some nice mobility. And if you haven't seen my reviews before, green is the best, red is the worst, and orange is somewhere in between, and the figures highlighted in yellow are with my equipment and my commander setup applied to the base stats, and I'll talk you through that in just a little bit. But let's start off with the Silver XP and Commander XP bonus, as this is a premium vehicle. It's got a silver bonus of 55%, and as you can see that's the same as the Armour, better than the Jaguar Black Edition by 5% and 10% worse than the Bandit. And then of course there have been these changes to the Cold War economy, which came with today's update on the 30th of January as I'm recording this video. So not a bad silver bonus, you'll be making some nice silver still, even with the reduction in the silver economy. XP bonus 15%, again the same as the Armour, 5% more than the Bandit, and the Black Edition, the Jaguar Black Edition, having 75% on the XP because it is a Black Edition tank. And Commander XP bonus on the WZ-1224, 15%. Again, the same as the Armour, better than the Bandit and better than the Jaguar Black Edition, so a good start to life for the WZ-1224. And now we're going to get into the raw stats of the vehicle, and we're going to start with the hit points. I'll quickly stop the top row so we can see what tank we're talking about. I don't have to keep scrolling up. Hit points wise, the WZ-1224 has 2,750, which is the highest in this comparison, 100 more than the Armour, 150 more than the Jaguar Black Edition and the Bandit, so that's good news. Might allow you to take that extra shot in the battle. You also have 490 meters view range, which is more than the Armour, just 5 meters less than the Bandit, and you have 15 meters less than the Jaguar Black Edition, but pretty good and pretty capable at spotting for itself. And you can always rely, of course, on the True Vision system to be able to spot your opponents, but I've had no problems getting spotting assistance in this tank. Next, we're going to go on to the mobility of this vehicle, and a lot of it is highlighted in orange and red, which usually means it's pretty bad, but in the case of the WZ-1224, it's actually not too bad. You have a 950 engine power, the same as the AMOLED and the Bandit, 200 more than the Jaguar Black Edition, with a power to weight ratio of 21.69, so it's better than the AMOLED, the Jaguar Black Edition, and just slightly behind the Bandit. So if you played these vehicles, a very similar power to weight ratio. In terms of your top forward speed, 65 kilometers an hour. It's more than the Jaguar Black Edition and a little bit behind the AMOLED and the Bandit. Reverse speed, 26.7 kilometers an hour. This is a little bit of a downside. It's better than the Jaguar Black Edition, not quite as good as the AMOLED and the Bandit, but you can improve that with the mobility equipment, and I'll show you whether I do that in just a little bit. Hold reverse, 40 degrees a second, so better than the AMOLED and a little bit behind the Jaguar Black Edition, with the Bandit being much more mobile. So I do recommend trying to improve that so that you can get your hull around, because you have some very nice armour on this premium medium tank. Turret traverse, 34 degrees a second, the same as the AMOLED and the Jaguar Black Edition, and 2 degrees a second less than the Bandit. This goes up with gun handling skills, and once you have applied your gun handling skills and you've improved the whole traverse, yeah, it feels very nice and nimble, especially when you're going at your top forward speed. And if you choose to improve that, it does feel quite nice and mobile. So even though it's orange and red, looks can be deceiving, it's actually a pretty mobile tank, very similar to the other tanks in this comparison, with the Bandit being probably the best of the lot in pretty much every regard. In terms of the gun then, and of course this is one of the most interesting aspects of most tanks, it's got a 120mm caliber gun, as does the AMOLED, and the Bandit has a 125mm caliber gun, so the highest in this comparison, whereas the Jaguar Black Edition has a 105mm caliber gun. They're not always the same. One 120mm might have more, might have less alpha damage, so of course it's always interesting to see what a tanks console do with the stats of these vehicles. On this 120mm caliber gun, you have 3 flavours of ammunition. You have APF SDS as your standard ammunition choice. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Heat as a premium ammunition choice, and HE as a third ammunition selection. Your standard rounds go a very nice 1615 meters a second, good for sniping at mid to long ranges. You don't have to give too much lead, and yeah, the only thing you have to worry about is penetration drop off over distance. Talking of penetration, 372mm of penetration on your standard rounds, the worst in this comparison, and yet very disappointing, and 470 alpha damage, so less than the 530 on the AMOLED. Your Heat rounds have 950 meters a second shell velocity, so have to almost double your lead when you're firing at mid to long ranges. If you use Heat rounds, they're notoriously hard to use in eras 2 and 3. Because of all the spaced armour, composite armour, they usually just get absorbed. You have to hit weak spots and parts of the armour that aren't spaced, and for me, I don't carry any Heat rounds on this vehicle, or in any vehicle in eras 2 and 3. I just don't find them worth it. However, if you do so wish, it will jump your penetration to 440mm for that same 470 alpha damage. And lastly, your HE rounds have the best in class shell velocity at 905 meters a second, the worst penetration at 130 for 610 alpha damage. So what is this gun like compared to all the other guns in this comparison? Well, we've already noted on this 120mm caliber gun, it's less than the 120 on the AMOLED by 60 alpha. You have the worst standard penetration by somewhere. You think of the AMOLED having 418 and the Bandit having 408. That's still relatively low for era 2, and the Jaguar Black Edition out there in front at 432. So your standard rounds will struggle against FE4211s and Chieftain CTRs, things that are very strong frontally, so you're going to have to go for those weak spots, track your tanks and try and flank them, and you will lose penetration over distance. I really wish that the premium option was APF SDS with higher pen, because then you could retain that shell velocity as well as getting a penetration, and more likely to actually penetrate because Heat will be absorbed, whereas APF SDS is more likely to go through. In terms of your shell velocity, HE, that's great as we've already discussed. It does bump your alpha damage up to 610, but 130mm of pen's very hard to use, and you're only going to really want to be using it against things like the M50 Ontos, lightly armoured, light tanks like the BMP2, BMP1, that kind of thing. But yeah, all round you can make it work. A disappointing lack of a viable premium option in my opinion, but you can make the penetration work. It is a struggle if you don't know your weak spots and you're firing at mid to long ranges. You'll lose a lot of penetration over distance, so it's better off sort of medium to close supporting your heavy tanks, but then you do have a relatively good alpha damage and good shell velocity. So now about the gun handling and DPM then of this 120mm caliber gun. You have a 2-second aim time, which is the same as the Jaguar Black Edition, better than the Bandit, and a little bit worse than the AMOLAD. In terms of your accuracy, 0.32, slightly worse than the AMOLAD. It's better than the Bandit, and not quite as good as the Jaguar Black Edition. You have a rate of fire of 6.9, which means you reload in 8.7 seconds for your 470 or 610 alpha damage, which gives you a DPM of 3,243, and as you can see, this is the worst in this comparison. It's kind of more similar to a Bandit's DPM, and then you get the Jaguar Black Edition with the AMOLAD pulling out in front by a long way, and there are tanks in Era 2 with far superior DPM to this tank, so you don't want to trade DPM for DPM. You want to sort of put one shot in, fall back, try and bait people into using your armour, and shoot when you know that you're not going to be taking any damage. In terms of your ammo capacity, 46 rounds. You can carry more than the Bandit and less than the Jaguar Black Edition and the AMOLAD. And here's where it gets really awkward for this vehicle. 5 degrees of gun depression, the worst in this comparison. The AMOLAD and Bandit have 6, and the Jaguar Black Edition, which I quite liked, has 7, and that was one of the reasons why I quite liked that vehicle, just enough to be able to use some ridgelines, whereas on the WZ-1224, very, very difficult to use it in some scenarios. And on the maps with big hills like Westfield or Halfaya Pass, it can become quite tricky, so you have to think about your positioning, try and flank, get flat on level ground, but where you do get hold down, as we're going to see, the armour is quite nice. However, you do have the best in class gun elevation at 20 degrees, which is 6 more than the AMOLAD and the Bandit, and 3 more than the Jaguar Black Edition. So a quick rundown of this vehicle. You've got a good silver XP and commander XP bonus, the highest hit points with decent enough view range, very admirable mobility, which can be improved, and you are very, very quick compared to some of the other sort of heavy tanks and things, and you're very similar to the medium tanks that we're discussing today and other medium tanks in Era 2. The only things that will outrun you are the faster medium and of course the light tanks. Main things you want to improve your mobility are your hull and turret traverse with gun handling skills and mobility equipment. In terms of your 120mm, a slightly lower alpha damage than on the AMOLAD, but you've got good standard shell velocity, and even though your penetration is worst in class, you can make this work. A very unfortunate heat run as a premium ammunition selection, which holds this vehicle back, and your HE rounds are good enough to go through lightly armoured targets but don't carry too many. Good gun handling that you can make to a very respectable level, poor DPM so you don't want to get into a fight of DPM, and yeah, gun depression worst in class, and it does hold you back with enough rounds usually to last the battle. So that's it for the stats part of this review. What do I run in terms of an equipment and commander setup on the WZ-1224? Well, in terms of my equipment, I like to run the advanced loader, the improved ventilation and the traction system. And in terms of my commander skills, Sixth Sense, Born Leader, Rapid Loading, Steady Aim, Rapid Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Clutch Braking and Off-Road Driving. So in terms of my commander skills, Sixth Sense and Born Leader I think are vital on every commander that I have. That is 9 skills. Rapid Loading to help the DPM as it is the worst in this comparison. 4 gun handling skills, make the most of the gun, make every shot count because of that poor DPM. And Clutch Braking to help the whole rotation. Off-road driving to help the handling on different terrains to make it nice and nimble getting across the battlefield. And in terms of the equipment, I go with the loader to help the DPM, vents to help the DPM, the view range, everything about the vehicle, and traction system to improve my max speed and my whole rotation by 10%. You could not use the traction system and it would still be relatively quick, and you could go for something like gun stabilizer to further improve the accuracy. You could use the advanced powertrain to improve your max speed and max horsepower by 5%, or you could use something else, anything else that you wish. It's completely up to you. This is just my recommendations of what I've gone for. And in terms of for consumables, I run large med, large repair kit, and I run the enhanced smoke screen. However, I'm considering dropping that for the enhanced rations to further improve the DPM of this vehicle. And I carry 43 standard rounds and 5 HE rounds into every battle with no heat rounds at all, as the APF SDS are far superior in eras 2 and 3 in my opinion. So if you do run that same setup, you'll be now looking at a view range of 521 meters. And in terms of the mobility, what has changed? Your top forward speed has gone from 65 to 71.5, and your reverse speed from 26.7 to 29.37 kilometers an hour. And in terms of your whole traverse, 40 degrees is now 47.8 degrees a second, and 34 degrees a second on your turret is now 40.36 degrees a second. So nice and nimble, good at getting your hull and turret around with your thickest armour to those incoming shells and ATGMs. And in terms of your gun handling, now got a very nice 1.88 second aim time, a 0.27 accuracy. Rate of fire has gone up to 9.22, which means we now reload in 6.51 seconds for 4,333 DPM. So that's it for the stats part of this review of the WZ-1224. We're now going to go over to the garage, have a look at the armour profile of this vehicle. I'll tell you what I found out during my play session, and then we're going to get stuck into the first of 4 gameplay. So I'll see you over in the garage in just a second. So we're now in the garage and we're going to have a look at the armour viewer of the WZ-1224. I'm going to go from the thickest down to the thinnest parts of the armour, and then I'll tell you what I found out during my play session in this vehicle today, and tell you how to play it if you have picked one up, and how to take them out on the battlefield if you come up against one. So the thickest part of the armour is 320mm at the base of the gun. You have 310mm at the sides of the upper plate. The base level of the turret is 280mm, and as you can see, this is behind the gun as well, and it's sloped back to the left, sloped back to the right. Very hard to tell from the visual of this tank, as there is some spaced composite armour over the cheeks of the turret, but they are angled, which is why it is so good at bouncing. 260mm above and below the gun there, inside the turret. You've got a mid plate here of 240mm of armour, which is angled as you can see and separates the lower plate and the upper plate. You've got 220mm of armour here on top of the turret, 190mm in the sort of midsection of the upper plate, and it is slightly angled up, and then there's a flat section above it. So if you're hitting it at an angle, it's most likely going to be auto ricochet unless you are above it. 160mm of outer upper plate armour towards the mid plate section. Sides of the turret 150mm, and the cupolas on top of this vehicle are also 150mm. They're very small, and when it's using its 5 degrees of gun depression, it can be a hard shot to hit. If you're above it, then you definitely can go through them. And then you've got these sections of space composite armour, 140mm over the front left, front right of this tank, and also in front of the engine deck right at the back. And this is something that you can see if this thing's side scraping. You can go through into the engine deck, and that is definitely a shot that you can hit. 135mm on the right cupola of the thinnest parts of armour. Then you've got these sections of space composite armour underneath the thickest parts on the turret, 120mm of armour. And yeah, remember, this is angling behind this at even stronger armour, so even if your shell ricochets off the top bit down into the bottom bit, you're most likely going to be bouncing off of this turret. Then you've got a section on top at 110mm. The lower plate is the massive weak spot on this vehicle, and it is very large, as you can see, 100mm. And due to the fact you only have 5 degrees of gun depression, you do have to expose this an awful lot to get over ridge lines. And yeah, this is a nice easy shot. It is angled, so against autocannon rounds, if you're angling and wiggling, you will bounce them, but you won't bounce even poor penetration in Era 2. Rear of the turret 90mm. You have 80mm of side armour, which does allow you to side scrape, but be warned, people can shoot the top of that engine deck as it does protrude out, as you can see. Turret ring 65mm, and then you've got a base layer of upper plate armour 60mm across the whole angled surface, well angled, and if you angle it up yourself, this is going to be ricocheting lots of shells. With space composite armour over the front of it, I've absorbed quite a few ATGMs into the front of this vehicle, and that also goes on top of the vehicle at 60mm across the top. The highest penetration ATGMs can still go through your upper hull, but it's definitely not a 100% chance, and if you're wiggling, hopefully you can catch and absorb the ATGM. You've got a section of space composite armour over the upper plate here, or upper hull, 50mm, and this does protect really well, and that's that flak section, as you can see, just below the turret. You've got 45mm of rear armour, and that's where your engine is. Your engine does get damaged and you can get set on fire quite a lot from the back, so definitely be warned, and that's where you want to shoot if you've got ATGMs. 40mm of rear turret armour, but it's sloped backwards and you can actually see that from the front when it's using its gun depression. This engine deck here, 30mm, as you can see, and you can see it when it's side scraping, that little blue section. Shoot there and you can overmatch it with 91mm caliber guns or higher. The tracks and some spaced armour over the back at 20mm, and then you've got random 15-10mm of composite armour. But what are the take homes of this tank? Well, as you can see, if you're going to try and go through the turret, you can go underneath the space composite armour, so the sort of purpley grey sections underneath the green sections, as you can see, and if you've got really high pen right underneath the gun, you can go through. Alternatively, shoot the cupolas. You can overmatch the front turret of this vehicle, and yeah, if you're shooting heat or ATGMs, things like that, into the front of the turret where the space composite armour is with the green sections, you're going to get your ATGMs absorbed or your heat rounds absorbed. Same with the upper hull. If you're going to shoot with high penetration ATGMs, go for this green area, avoid that purple strip, and that massive blue lower plate is a big weak spot. If you're playing this vehicle, what you want to do is try and get hold out where possible. Quite hard to do with 5 degrees of gun depression, and you want to try and bait people into shooting your turret or your upper hull. And if people have the whole of your tank to shoot at from the front, angle like this, move at them like this, and hopefully they'll go off over your upper plate, as your lower plate will be a penetration for everything apart from auto cannons. You can side scrape, but be wary, people will start to shoot the rear of your engine deck, that purple and green section towards the rear, and when they get around the side of you, it's a nice easy penetration. Your engine deck protrudes out, and this is a nice HE ATGM haven for people to shoot at. So try and keep everyone frontally, improve your mobility with your whole traverse, using things like clutch braking, off-road driving, and the mobility equipment, and yeah, avoid people shooting your lower plate, but be aggressive. Try and bait people to shoot off your upper hull if they got poor penetration, and yeah, use your mobility to get around their sides with your pull pen and try and put damage into them. The cupolas are hard to hit, and yeah, it's a very strong turret, very strong upper plate, and from the side you are vulnerable, but from the front you are pretty good for a medium tank. So that's it for my armour look at the WZ-1224. We're now going to head on into the first of 4 gameplays. So we are now into the first gameplay of today's video, and we are here in the WZ-1224 on Azure Coast, which is the brand new map that was community designed, and I've only really seen this map a couple of times and played on it once in testing on one of the World of Tanks console streams, so I have no idea where I'm going. I've spawned in the northeast, so I'm going to head my way down this kind of beach section in the north, and hopefully try and find the flattest parts of this map to be able to use 5 degrees of gun depression. This was also my first game in the WZ-1224, so I think it's a good first gameplay to show you, to see what it's like when you first pick it up, how easy it is to get going, and to see how my setup works. And then of course you can tweak it to your liking, so they do get progressively better in terms of the gameplays as we go through the 4 gameplays I have for you today, as I get to grips with the tank and yeah, get used to its playstyle. But we've come to this section here in C3, and there's an enemy MX-13 SS11 TCA, my favourite Era 2 premium tank. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the gun depression quick enough to be able to get a shot in on that light tank, and as you can see, when you stop, there is a little bit of a bloom around the gun. However, the aim time is pretty low now, and it doesn't feel too bad. But if you were to get rid of that, maybe take off the enhanced smoke screen, and you could use something like the combat rations. The AMX-13 guesses really well that I reversed up through the smoke there that we popped. However, our tracks absorbed the ATGM and we put a round into him, and now I'm just going to have to push the tempo, push the kind of advantage on this AMX. I don't really want to get caught in this situation because I know it's got an auto-loading ATGM launcher, and yeah, I don't want to be caught in that position, but I also want to try and make the most of this gun. So we're going to pop up here, quickly get a snapshot in on that heavy tank, and yeah, I'm looking at where that light tank is. You can see how much you do have to sort of go over ridge lines to expose yourself to be able to get the shots in on the enemy. However, when you find the perfect ridge line, this turret is very, very strong indeed. So I thought I was going to come over and help this FV4-11 out, but yeah, it's not often that FV4-11s need helping, so we use the enhanced hold reverse that we've improved with the clutch braking and the traction system to swivel round, and now we can go after these heavy tanks that are above us. And I've picked probably the steepest ridge on this map to try this tank out. As we go up, we kind of bobble with the gun depression, and I really should have just waited there, took a shot and put one in return. But yeah, still trying to learn the map, trying to learn this tank. We're getting some spotting assistance on this T72M1, and we spot a T55 Enigma in the distance, and now we're taking shots from this Scorpion 90 who is coming after us. As you can see, he is very confident at going around us, but because we've improved our mobility, you can see here, as long as we're keeping our hull and turret to him, moving them at the same time, we're going to be able to bounce him. And he's probably auto-locking, trying to circle strafe us, which, yeah, it's not a bad strategy usually in a light tank when you're circle strafing a medium or heavy. However, when you auto-lock on the WZ-1224, the armour becomes incredibly good because you kind of bypass that lower plate, you go into the upper plate, into the turret, and that's where the spaced composite armour is, the angling is, and yeah, that's when you start to bounce rounds in this tank. So one of the things that you shouldn't do in this vehicle, or coming up against this vehicle, is auto-lock against it. Aim for that lower plate if you have a shot on it, because the upper plate and turret are pretty strong for a medium tank. And now we're going to poke round this little rock here and get some shots at this Leopard 1A5. We're winning this game massively. I haven't had a massive impact, but I wanted to show you this sort of end bit here where the accuracy is pretty good. You've got enough DPM to go into these engagements, and when you're confident of an engagement and you're harassing your enemy, that's when they start to become a little bit flustered. They don't know where to shoot because this is a new tank, and they're not going to be shooting my lower plate. They're going to be shooting my turret. They're going to be shooting my upper plate, and we're going to get a nice little bit of damage and some blocked here as we go up. So I've just decided to go up. They've both fired. I'm going to go up after the Leopard 1A5 first, as I know it's probably a tank that I can take out quicker, and we're just going to go around him, use him as cover, get up behind this T55 Enigma, try and focus down one tank to start off with. However, now that Leopard 1A5's gone out, we're going to go for this T55 Enigma, and as you can see, as long as you're kind of near them, you're kind of angling, you're just harassing them as much as possible, then you can bounce a little bit of damage in this vehicle. And now we can go into the turret ring here of the T55 Enigma, and that's all she wrote. That was my first ever game on this map and in this tank. Nothing spectacular, but we still finished in the MVP slot. Profits, yeah, a little bit disappointing with the Cold War economy changes. That's a second class mastery. 1338 basic speed, 3 kills, 4.6k direct damage, 427 assistance and 1880 blocked. And yeah, that's what this tank is about. Pretty mediocre damage. You can get some assistance, a good silver maker, very, very solid for a medium tank, and yeah, it will get better from here on out with some pretty tasty games being the last couple of games in this video. So we're now going to head on into the second gameplay, and I'll see you there shortly. So we are now into the second gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Heilbronn in the WZ-1224. It's a standard battle, and we are already over a minute into this game as we haven't had anything to shoot at so far. I don't want to push any further forwards than I am now. Due to the fact that all of our team are still in spawn, there's not many ridge lines that will accommodate 5 degrees of gun depression, so I want to pick and choose my battles very carefully, and I want to make sure that I do have support whilst playing this particular game. We get a nice shot at this TR-125 crossing that gap. He comes back after us. We were thinking about trying to get another shot in, however, he gets tracked in place and obliterated, and we get that spotting assistance. There's a bandit to my left, so I'm keeping a mental note of that, and I am going to see if there's another shot around the right of this ridgeline. There's not a shot on this M60A2 as he falls back, so what I'm going to do is pop some smoke in this gap and try and make it across the open field as quickly as possible. Unfortunately for our friend in front of us here, the AMX-30B2, he had the same idea as me. He went first, he didn't pop smoke, and he got caught out in the open there. But we're going to chase down this bandit who looks like he is retreating. We have a light tank that is going to follow us up, and I'm going to make some mistakes in this particular engagement. Auto-aiming at this distance with the bloom when you stop is a little bit risky. It's more than likely going to go in, but what happens is when you auto-aim, it goes to the centre mass of the tank. So in the case of these tanks, sort of upper hull, turret level, and with the poor penetration this vehicle has, you might actually hit the tank, but you might not penetrate. So what you want to do is aim every shot with this tank, and that's how you're going to get the most out of any tank, but in particular tanks that have poor gun depression, like the WZ-1224. We can't go through the turret of that Magak 5, but he will subsequently get taken out, which means we can push on this bandit. We're going to auto-aim at this distance. Again, not recommended, but in this scenario it works out and we take him out. This AMX-13 has spotted us, and it looks like he's coming straight for us. So I'm going to try and get my hull and turret lined up with his ATGM. Unfortunately, our composite armour didn't really work too well there, but then the MX-13 does have some of the best ATGMs in Era 2, so it's not going to work all of the time. However, it's always worth swiveling your hull and turret around, trying to bait them into shooting your upper hull or turret, and yeah, that gives you the best chance of getting out of those scenarios when ATGM tanks come after you. I've blocked quite a lot of damage, or absorbed quite a lot of damage from ATGMs in this tank. And yeah, it's definitely got some pretty nice armour. It's just, yeah, it's not going to work all of the time. Have to crest quite a lot over this ridge to get a shot in on this Ignis Pagacio there. And he gets taken out by our Chieftain CTR. Type 79. Now, I'm pretty confident that he's not going to be able to pen me if he's auto-aiming, so I'm just going to go straight in at him. We put one into him, then we swivel around him. A bit slow on the trigger there. And yeah, it's just the last remaining tank destroyer left. We've picked up 4k direct damage, 2.6k assistance, and 550 blocked. There is an M50 on toss left, and it might be tricky to find him, so I'm going to be looking with the free camera. He's there in the corner. We've loaded an HE round. Unfortunately, we just splash underneath him, but I'm going to go through the smoke and use the weight of this tank. And when you're running something like an M50 on toss, you're going to have a really good time with the WZ-1224. So that's it for that gameplay there on Heilbronn. We finish in second place. A profit with or without a premium account. Second class Confederate medal. 1,291 base XP, 2 kills, 5,296 damage, 3,057 assistance, and 550 blocked. So a nice game there in 4 minutes 44 seconds. That's it for this gameplay. We're now going to head on into the next one, so I'll see you over there in just a second. So we are now into the third gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Westfield, which is my favourite map, and we are in the WZ-1224. It's already over a minute into this battle, as we were just driving into position, and I didn't want to waste your time by watching me just drive to where I am now here in K6. We're trying to get some shots over towards the east, and trying to shoot tanks that are situated on the bridge. Got to be a little bit careful of tanks that are in the centre of the map getting side shots into me, but we're using the True Vision system, and this ridgeline is perfect for 5 degrees of gun depression. You can see here that we're able to get shots at these tanks on the ridge directly in front of us, and if they shoot back at us, we're more than likely just going to bounce them with our good turret armor, which becomes more effective the further you are away from your opponents, as usually they're firing APF SDS, and that's going to lose penetration over distance. But we're not getting too many shots there, so I'm going to move up a ridgeline. Going to be quite aggressive here on this side, as I notice it looks like we're going to lose over in the northwest. So I do try and fire on the move, then pop a smoke, and then I'm going to come and join this heavy tank over here and see if we can poke round, angle up our upper hull, try and bait them into shooting our upper hull and our turret, and then we're going to see what we can do. I tried to flick a shot there into the cupola of the Chieftain 120 and derped it into the ground. Partly my aim, partly sometimes after you do stop, that bloom just can catch you out, and now we're going to try and get a shot into this 30B-24 which doesn't have fantastic armour, but at the angle he's at and with the poor penetration of this gun, he's going to become a real nuisance. So we get a side shot into his turret, the gun derps into the ground there, or the shell derps into the ground I should say, and now we got another shot on his turret which bounces, and I know it's probably angled turret and I'm not shooting the right spots, but more often than not mediocre to good penetration would easily go through the 30B-24 even straight through the turret. But here's this Magak 3 which has a weak turret at the front. We can go straight through there to the left of his gun. We're up to 2.1k damage, we've blocked 920, lost a little bit of HP, and we've got 513 assistance. We're down by one tank, and I'm very aware that it's only us three here in this corner in K0, and then everyone else is defending the base. So I'm going to reverse up and see if I can get shots across the map. And as you can see, the side of the M103A2 was orange on the pen indicator, so losing a lot of pen at distance with the APF SDS rounds here, so I'm going to have to try and hit the side flat on if I'm going to penetrate. I'm going to try and go for the cupola as well in a minute, and it's just a little bit awkward to be able to pen things at this distance. This is when maybe a couple of heat rounds would be useful. The M103A2 doesn't really have any spaced armour to note, so against tanks like that it would have been quite useful. However, the shell velocity for hitting things on the move at this distance is admirable on the standard APF SDS round, so it really is up to you what rounds you like using. I just carry 5 of the HE and the rest the standard ammunition. We're up to 3.7k direct damage, still down by one tank, and we're just trying to see if we can spot tanks in the distance using the True Vision system. Don't want to sort of skyline myself on this ridgeline, don't want to give myself away too quickly. We do have tanks that have some hit points, and the BMP2 could use the mobility to get over there and do some spotting, but I've kind of had enough now. I'm going to try and use this dead wreck and this slope here and go as quickly as possible. We have boosted our mobility up with the traction system, with the clutch braking and off-road driving, so I'm going to get down to this dip as quickly as possible, and it's very fortunate that I did so as we are being capped out. So I'm going to make my way back to the base, and if we see anyone on the way, we're going to try and take them out. My original thought was to crest the ridge or the hill to my right, get some spotting for all of the tanks that are situated at the back, but we're going to have to go and defend the base. There is this Object 120, I believe, who is going to come down the hill now. Here he comes, and we're able to free aim there. Don't have to give too much lead with the great shell velocity, and the Object 120 has absolutely no armour, and we quickly snap an auto-aim shot into the rear of him. As we notice, there's two people in the cap, and we're just going to have to rush into position. We've got some hit points, now's the time to use it, and you're going to see here the power of a medium tank with armour, and just being aggressive, putting your enemies under pressure. 4 seconds left, we're going to go through the smoke, get one kill, and then we're going to turn and keep our hull and turret towards this Leopard 1, and we can hopefully just go straight through the poor armour on that vehicle. He shoots directly into our gun, which doesn't do any damage, breaks our gun, which we repair, and then we get the kill on the M60. And now we're going to reverse up and see if we can get shots in on this Magak 3. Unfortunately, it does derp there. If I was using the ventilation instead of the traction system, gun handling would be slightly better, but if we let it aim in for just slightly longer, you can see there we do get a nice shot in on this Magak 3, and now we can advance on him, and if he comes over the ridge, it's quite likely our tank destroyer friend behind us will take him out, and if not, we can get up there and we should be able to shut him down. So we picked up 5 kills, blocked nearly 2,000 damage, and got 5.8k, or now 5.9k direct damage with 513 assistance. And it's just the enemy 30B24 which is left on the enemy team. He's fighting our T-72, so T-72 should usually win in that scenario, but the 30B24 does have a very nasty secondary gun who he's ripping the T-72 apart, and part of me was hoping, you know, one more kill, I've got enough to take a shot from the AMX, kind of greedily hoping the T-72 would get taken out so I could go down and take him out. We're going to come down from below. I was kind of guessing he was going to be at the crest of the ridgeline looking towards the hills to my left, so we're going to come in from behind him, use the mobility of this tank, and as you can see it gets across the battlefield really nicely. See if we can get our 7th kill here and take this game down. And fortunately we did buff the mobility because, yeah, we had 4 seconds left on that cap to be able to get that defender medal. And now we're going to come up behind this AMX. He is trying to retreat. He wasn't looking our way, and we get our shot into him, picking up our 7th kill. We blocked 2.3k damage there, finished MVP on our team. Good profit with or without a premium account. 7 kills, 6.2k direct damage, 513 assistance. And that is a sniper, not a sniper, a Top Gun, a defender, and a first class there for 1443 base XP. And yeah, a very good game there on Westfield. 8 minutes, 6 seconds duration. And a nice result, showing you what you can do with a little bit of patience in the WZ-1224. So that's it for the 3rd gameplay. We are now going to head on into the 4th and final gameplay, so I'll see you over there in just a tick. So we are now into the 4th and final gameplay of today's video, and we are here on Halfaya Pass in a standard battle in the WZ-1224. It's over a minute into this particular game, as I again just didn't want to show you me driving around, as we all know what driving around in tanks looks like in this game. It's got good mobility, and yeah, it's soft terrain, so it's going to take a while on Halfaya Pass to be able to get into position. But we've come up here to F6 as the enemy haven't pushed too far forwards, and it's a little bit of an awkward ridge in front of us, but we can kind of rock up, quickly get our shells in, and then rock back down. I thought the BMP-1 had fired, but he didn't, and luckily our composite armour on the front of this vehicle held firm there, and we absorbed his ATGM. This M60A1 is coming after us, and I'm just trying to bait them into either coming out after me or overpoking and getting shot from behind. This TR-85 is trying to get shots in on me, and we're just angling, rocking side to side and trying to get him to bait off of our upper plate and turret using the auto aim. And at that kind of angle, when you're shooting down on the lower plate, that would also be sometimes an auto ricochet angle depending on the steepness of the angling on the lower plate. You can see here it's a little bit awkward trying to get shells over this ridgeline. 5 degrees is really awkward in some scenarios, but when they overpoke you can quickly get snapshots into them. The M60A1 is looking elsewhere, so I tried angle for the AMX 30B2. He still pens me, but we're just going to come up now, see if we can take him out. We put another one into him after he gets a shot absorbed. We're blocking his autocannon. We're going to use the weight of our tank to ram him, and then I thought I was going to quickly get an auto-aimed kill on the M60A1. Again, I'd like to reiterate, please aim, especially in a tank like this with poor pen. If you hit a bit of armour that is just slightly too well angled, you are just going to bounce, and it's going to be really annoying for you in this vehicle. So we do have some slim shots on this T-72 AV, and we're just waiting to see if he reverses up enough. He's kind of teasing me here a little bit, but we did just go straight through there. Not sure whether it went through the building and then into him, or it deviated to the right and went into the rear of his vehicle, but trying to see if I can quickly cross this gap and go and help out our tanks in taking that T-72 AV out. Mobility there, nice to cross the gap. At this distance from the side, that auto aim isn't too bad, and now we can get to the side of this vehicle, and he's kind of all but given up. One more shot into the side of this T-72 AV. Bit of a cluster, you know what here, so we try and get a quick snapshot into the front of the T-72 AV, and we're just going to move on to the other tanks. We're only up by 3 tanks, so it's still a relatively close game, and there's always the chance on this map you're going to be capped out, so I'm always trying to keep an eye on that. You can see that we have blocked nearly 5k damage in this tank in this gameplay with 5.8k damage, 3 kills and 111 assistance. There's a conqueror to our right, if I can speak, and he comes down, which allows us to get a shot into the rear of his vehicle. And are we going to get the killing blow? We've loaded and we have taken him out, and now we can move on and see what else we can do in this game. We've got 1642 HP left, so hopefully I can make the most of that HP to get some more damage. And now it's all about trying to maximize our XP and our silver earn in this game, and also making sure we don't get capped out. So we have started to cap them out, and I'm going to go down the center ravine here and see if we can get some shots at any tanks that are coming back to defend their base. And as we're doing that, I'd like to give you my final opinions on the WZ-1224. On paper, I was a little bit hesitant because of the 5 degrees of gun depression. However, the armor more than makes up for it. As long as you hide that lower plate and you angle and you try and get hull down where possible, if you're sensible about how you're using the 5 degrees of gun depression, what ridgelines you use, whether you got support, etc., you can definitely make it work, and it feels really nice to play. And it definitely is a little bit of a troll. As people get to know it, of course people are going to penetrate it slightly easier, and if you hate poor penetration, you're not really going to like this tank. However, I find that it does work. It would be nice to have an extra degree or 2 of gun depression and an APF SDS premium option. However, you can't have everything. I think even if it had that, it wouldn't be, you know, overpowered or broken. It would still be pretty good. However, yeah, it's fine for what it is. I think it's a pretty good 2000 gold tank, and it's kind of worth the grind for that price, in my opinion, and people are going to do relatively well in it. Not the most sort of new player friendly because of that pen and because of the gun depression, but when you get the hang of it, and if you're running around on flat ground, then you can do some nice things in this vehicle. So we do get one into that FV4-211. Even from the side, that vehicle is hard for a tank like the WZ-1224 to pen, and we do cap out, which is a little bit frustrating, but I can kind of understand. We pick up a nice profit with or without a premium account. We get the cool headed medal, 2nd class, top of our team, MVP slot, 1412 base XP, 5 kills, 7691 damage, 111 assistance, 4695 damage blocked. Shows you everything this tank can do. Not the best in terms of pen and DPM, but you can make it work. Armor makes up for that, and the mobility is fine. If you improve it, I feel like it makes the tank even more fun. And yeah, it's absolutely fine. Pretty good for 2000 gold. Let me know what you think of this vehicle, or what you think it looks like, and whether you're looking forward to picking up this tank. Thank you all so much for your support, and until then, I hope you enjoy the new season. I'll see you on the battlefield, and bye for now.